Good afternoon. I'm Sean Hewitt from the Trusted Business Community Association, and today I'm joined by Bill Coleman of Redwood Collections. Redwood Collections are a recent accredited member of our association, and we're proud to have them as part of the association to help small businesses overcome the stresses and strains of collecting aged debt. Now, this is a problem, I'm sure that Bill will talk about this in a little while, but this is a problem that's facing a lot of small businesses where the relationship with a company has broken down a little bit and there's not the opportunity to get the aged debt back. So a company like Redwood Collections comes in and smooths the way by actually making it their priority to talk and discuss that debt with your clients. Bill, it's lovely to have you here. Thanks ever so much for joining us.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
So, Bill, so that the people who are listening into this interview, wherever they may be listening into it, whether it's on our YouTube channel, on your website, or maybe somewhere else along the social medias, tell us a little bit about your backstory of how you arrived at becoming one of the senior team there at Redwood Collections, as well as give us a little bit of a backstory about Redwood and its purpose to the small business world.
Well, I mean, start with me. Spent most of my professional career in sort of sales, management, business development, account management, and things like that. Lockdown changed what I was doing quite heavily, and then I had a bit of a detour into sort of taking the managerial and sales process of what I do into the world of sort of running venues such as like small craft beer rooms, small restaurants, helping them get a management system in place. And then, you fall in love with those industries because they're fun. That came to a bit of an end. And then, I wanted to get back into more of a formal business to business as opposed to sort of business to consumer environment. Came across Redwood. Ironically, sort of then found out that I knew a few people here, which apparently had nothing to do with the hiring process. And then, I had an interview. Had sort of the question mark over all debt collection because when you hear debt collection, you can't help but think of the shows that you see, and it doesn't look like a glamorous or kind industry. But like most industries, once you get into them, you do see the other side of what the public perception is. Which, when you get into an industry like debt collection, you realise that you're a service-based industry to help people. And one thing that Redwood does quite well and this is why they're 15 years old as of the end of last year, so we're now in the 15th year. Their process of helping small businesses recover aged debt, whether it be 3 months old or up to 6 years old, the process is always the same, and the process is the same, but it can be tailored. Certain aspects are tailored to the individual. So we do a lot with small businesses and we do a lot with gargantuan ones. And depending on your needs and the age of the debt, and how your relationship is with your debtor, we can tailor our approach to that to an extent.
Awesome. Now, obviously, I mean, over the years, and you mentioned the big C word, you mentioned COVID, which was a time where a lot of businesses found things extremely difficult.
Yes.
There was turnover. Industry sectors were being closed down. Some of the last to open were people like pubs, restaurants, the sort of industry that you've had experience in, as well as obviously people like in the beauticians and things like that, because it was much more hands-on, literally, in those industries. So they were really struggling for such a long time to obviously even be able to open the doors and work and earn a living. Now, many of them survived, but many of them didn't. And of course, those that didn't, it was a tough time for everybody. But I think in what I've seen, and we've been, the association has now been from its infancy, pre us branding it to what it is today. I've been working around the industry for 22 years, and in those 22 years, I've seen some good times. 2008 was another tricky time for business.
Yeah.
And then, of course, now we've had recent issues where something like a pandemic has come along and really ground things to a halt for a lot of industries. Now, the recovery from these things takes time, doesn't it? Obviously, and
Yes.
are you still seeing some of the aged debt that you're dealing with for clients, not mentioning any names or any sort of ideas, but are you still seeing some of the effects of age debt from that time in 2020 when we ended up, pretty much a year in serious lockdown?
I'd say the one thing, so from the main thing we look at is dates. That, we have to look at the dates. And what I've noticed to be like a bit of a hangover from COVID is 2020, what happened happened. End of 21, bit more normal. So 21 to say 22, 23, where people were rebuilding, getting things up and running. Maybe they had loans and bits and pieces. Some people tried to expand or rebuild like that, and Rome wasn't built in a day. And that's where we're seeing the effects of COVID more from we're not open to we've tried to open and now we're hitting a bit of a stumbling block. So you've got people that had these fantastic ideas, whether they were, the best idea or whether they were genuine ideas, and people got all this work done, ordered all this work, ordered the materials, and then things fell flat. So that's where we saw the aftermath of COVID more from we're closed to now we own.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Obviously, I mean, there's a lot of no one goes into business with the view that they're not going to look to pay a supplier, but unfortunately, cash flow can often be a big influencer as to whether these things get paid up on time or whether they're starting to become more of an age debt issue. And I think, in this, I don't know so much about. I mean, you could tell me a bit more because I hang around more in the small to medium size world because that's the association supports.
Mm,
Um, but the I see that the domino effect of cash flow being a problem for small business owners because a lot of them out there have run hand to mouth for too long and they're not
absolutely.
making enough of an inroad and a profit. Is that still a big problem? Did you still see that as an issue for the small business world? Does Redwood see that?
Yes, yes, you can. I mean, for definite, no matter how big or small you are, one unpaid invoice or 1 month's bad revenue can rock your foundations. It doesn't matter how big or small you are. But for the smaller guys, it's a lot more important because if you're going from job to job and maybe you don't have 4 months worth of work lined up, that one payment can cause you a gargantuan issue. You can't buy materials for the next job, which means you can't do the next job. So yes, it has an impact, and that's where we come in to try and eliminate the problems that will occur from your first problem. Because, like I said, it's a domino effect. I've not been paid here. I can't do any of this. We try to stop that from happening. A lot of the times, I mean, if you can imagine your best friend you speak to every couple of days, he owes you a tenner. Maybe you don't speak to him every couple of days. It's every 5 days and it's maybe a week. That tends to be an issue with these smaller debts is that the communication breaks down. And one thing I've learned coming from a household of, engineering, sole trades and things like that, and my dad, he may not be the best at a bookkeeping, getting the agreement across properly, getting a signed agreement back. And so what we do, as well as help you collect, we help you then reinforce your next job. When you want to do work, this is how you form an agreement. So then if anything does go wrong, you can give it to us and we can proceed. So a lot of it is about education, and it's not a knock on anyone, but you don't know what you don't know. And the world of business is complex, especially in the construction world. So we're here to help you solidify your position and safeguard you moving forward. And that's just part of the service as well.
Now, you mentioned earlier when we were chatting about the vision that the general public perceived to be about debt collection, and of course, that's very much through programs that you see on
Yes.
television. Can't pay, won't pay, and all that sort of thing that's out there. Now, there's a whole different approach behind the scenes from what potentially we see as the final moments, which is when a bailiff turns up at the door and collects. There's a whole process before that, isn't there? And a
Yes.
much more hopefully an agreeable process so that parties can actually get to there before going to the litigation stage. Would you like to just explain a little bit more to those listening in that
Yeah.
that sort of the nicer side of the job, which you quite rightly picked out of? It's not all about what you see on the TV. Tell us a little bit more about the elements and efforts you go to avoid it getting to that point.
Yeah. So like just touch on what you said, what you see on TV is entertainment. Yes, it's reality. And out of all the reality TV shows that you see, that is probably the most realistic because it's real life. If you go back from that, that's your last step. And if you were to put me doing what I do on a TV show, it probably wouldn't get much attention. So what we do, the approach is very professional, and we're here to politely let a party know that you owe this amount of money. Here's the supporting information to clarify that this is what it is. Let's get it paid. And that's it. We send you a letter, an email, and a text message and a phone call. We say, hi, look, this is the situation. Yes, we're a collection agency. But hey, you owe the money. Let's get it paid. And that's the end of it. And depending on the debtor's behaviour, there's a couple more steps in the process. We work alongside the two. We bring our client and the debtor together. We can arrange payment plans. If there's a dispute, for example, you fit in my kitchen, it cost 10 grand. I think you did 7.5 grand's worth of work. Don't want to pay you the full whack. We open up that line of dialogue. And we get the two parties talking. So where you may be owed £10,000, you might go, do you know what? Yesterday I had nothing. 7.5 grand today sounds better. Yes, I get my profit margins on it and things like that. We just get you talking. What we also do for these debts, if your position is clear, yes, I did the work. This is what it's done. That's what it's worth. They're ignoring me. If it's a business to business debt, or if contractually specified between the two parties, we can recover your charges. So, we have a percentage on what we successfully collect. We can add what you would pay to the balance we show the debtor, and we collect that. So we collect your principal plus costs plus interest. So I had a case recently where we paid our client more money than what their invoice was worth because of the interest, and their debtor paid our costs. So our client walked away whole. The working relationship between the two got back on because they realised it was perhaps a miscommunication, new processes, new staff. And before you know it, there are instances where a staff member goes, oh, might put my head under the covers on this one. 2 months later, it comes back and it's a big green monster that you should have
Yeah.
faced when it was a small green egg. So that's basically the process before it gets to litigation, where costs can be incurred. Again, we do our best to recover all costs. Not everything is recoverable, but yeah, the less glamorous side is the more effective side. You receive a letter from us. We don't like to, use these words, but it is the reality of the situation. There's a third party psychology. If your wife doesn't know that you've not paid the invoice, she sees the letter. There can be, we write to you politely to say, hey, look, you owe the money. Let's pay. We're not here to take, take doors off or get £10 off of a granny for a gas bill. That's not how it works. That's the ghoulish side that people talk to you about in pubs that don't really know. We're professional, we're courteous, we're FCA regulated, which is huge. Not everyone is, so it does set you aside from everyone else. Heavy-handed tactics aren't a thing that we do. We can't. It's not worth it. It doesn't work. That's why we lean on professionalism, communication, transparency, and things like that. And we've got fantastic results by sticking to that.
Yeah. Brilliant. And of course, you mentioned that you have the way in which it works is obviously you'll take a percentage of of a recovered debt to obviously once on that recovery, that's where that's where your payments come in.
Yeah. So if you give us a case and we're unsuccessful, then there would be no fees. So you hand me a debt for £1,000. We pursue it pre-legally to the point where we've exhausted our pre-legal efforts. The options are to proceed, go legal, or should you wish, close the case. Obviously, there are variables in there. We can put an offer out to the debtor. We can try a payment plan and things like that. But if the debtor ignores every opportunity or just says, no, I'm not paying, they then paint our client and us into a corner where it's act or close. If the client doesn't wish to speculate further and pay for a legal, to try and pursue a CCJ, which again, we try to recover those costs. If they don't want to do it, we shake hands, hey, couldn't get this one. And then the client walks away having not spent any money. So if you've got, like you said, legacy debts of 6 years that you've written off, you may have 15 grand on your ledger that you've gotten rid of. If you hand it over to an agency like ourselves, if we collect 10 of that at a small percentage rate, throw it in the bin or hand it to us. If you hand it to us and we get nothing, you're in the same boat. If you hand it to us and we get all that money for you, you're up on the deal.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I like that approach because it's such a it's a nice approach to from a company's point of view to know that you're really working for them, and that's the reason why you take it as a percentage of what you collect is really showing that you're not just about being instructed and taking some money off of an instructed client. You're actually wanting to get instructed, do the job, and then get paid for your successes. And I think that's a really great way of going about business.
I mean, the only time we don't have upfront costs per se. The only time where a charge would be given to the client, again, which we seek to recover, would be if it's under a certain amount, there's a handling fee. So it's not a handling fee. So it's a charge for us taking it on. As if it's under a certain amount, the commission on it, we are a business too. The lights don't pay for themselves and things like that. So if it's under a certain amount, I think it's like if it's under 500, there's a fee, very small, but we seek to recover it. That's the only time where there'd be a upfront cost, as it were. Yeah, it's invoiced to you. And if it's a recoverable charge as per your terms, or if it's a business debt, the other side seek to pay that for you. So even then, in those cases, we fully recover plus costs. You don't pay that, or you do, and then when you get our payment, you'll have that popped in there as well.
Yeah, so I said, brilliant. So people listening into us chatting here today, they're probably going to want to know where to find you, where to find Redwood, how to connect up with you, and certainly especially if some of what we've talked about this afternoon has resonated with them to think, well, I didn't know that I've got up to 6 years to because a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think it's only 3 or it's only a certain amount of months that you've got to get it back. But 6 years worth of age debt, up to 6 years, there could be, like you said quite rightly, there could be 15, 20 grand that sat there in age debt that you thought, I'm never going to get that back. And then all of a sudden, there's an opportunity to get it back because you didn't realise that you can actually go for
precisely
up to 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, with the statute limitations, it's 6 years. So, I mean, you can find us on Google. Our website, redwoodcollections.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You see, I'm on LinkedIn as well, representing the business. We're on the Trusted Business Directory as well, so you can find us through you guys. So it's always worth having a conversation with us, even if you don't have a debt. If you think, hey, look, I think something's coming down the pipeline. I foresee some issues. Or even if you just want to strengthen your position, have a chat with us. We can give you information that you didn't know was a thing, and you might never need to speak to us ever again. You might have saved yourself thousands just by having that line of dialogue with us.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And obviously, being a member here at the association, you've been accredited with your service standard. And the key things that brought that accreditation to fore was the fact that the way you go about business, the way you look to obviously make sure that the journey for your client and the debtor is a smooth direction, a smooth journey for both, with a view that obviously you want to get it sorted before it goes to that critical point, which is obviously
absolutely.
And I think that's absolutely commendable. We're proud to have Redwood Collections as part of our association, and I know many of our members, I'm sure, will be intrigued to find out more, having listened to this interview. But also for those outside of membership who are listening in, Redwood Collections, as you quite rightly said, FCA regulated. You've got accreditation with ourselves. You are one of the go-to businesses in the industry that you serve, and obviously you're certainly our go-to business within the industry that you serve as well. So small business owners everywhere, medium-sized enterprises, even those like big corporates, Redwood Collections are here to help you get back money that is owed to you. So feel free to reach out to Bill and reach out to Redwood Collections either through LinkedIn or obviously on the other channels, including the website, to make sure that you get the right advice from the get-go. Bill Coleman, thanks ever so much for joining me this afternoon. Sorry, and I look forward to obviously speaking to you and seeing you over the course of the month and the year ahead.
My pleasure, Sean. Thank you very much, my friend.
No problem at all, my friend. Thank you so much for obviously allowing us the opportunity to have a meeting with you today.
Thank you.